All right, you magnificent bastards, welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill. You got a stack of research thicker than a goddamn Viking's beard, and we're here to shave off the bullshit and give you the sweet nectar of knowledge.
Cutting through the academic wank to get to the heart of the matter?
Damn straight. Today we're diving headfirst into the world of those, horned, helmet-wearing, mead-swilling badasses we all know and love. The Vikings buckle up buttercups. Shit's about to get real.
Or perhaps historically accurate.
Look, we all know the romanticized crap Hollywood shovels down our throats. Dudes with flowing blonde locks, swinging axes, and pillaging every village in sight. We're here to sift through the bullshit and find out what really went down.
Indeed, separating fact from fiction is essential when approaching any historical period.
And trust me, when it comes to Vikings, the fiction is piled higher than a funeral pyre. So, before we get into the blood and guts, let's start with the basics. Where the hell does the word Viking even come from? I mean, do they just sit around chugging mead and say, hey, let's call ourselves Vikings, sounds badass?
While the origins are debated, it's likely derived from an Old Norse term, Viking, which referred to a sea journey, often with the implication of raiding. So it wasn't so much a chosen name, but rather a description of their activities.
So Viking wasn't about nationality. It's more like, hey, I'm going Viking this weekend. Anyone want to come plunder some monasteries?
In essence, yes. The term originally referred to the act of going on expeditions, often for raiding or trading, not a specific ethnic group.
Got it.
Yeah.
So these guys weren't necessarily all born and bred in Scandinavia. You could basically be a Frankish farmer one day, decide to grab an axe and a longboat, and bam, instant Viking.
While oversimplifying it slightly, the concept of becoming a Viking through participation in these expeditions is more accurate than assuming it was a fixed identity from birth.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the Viking Age, we're not talking about a specific country or ethnicity. We're talking about a period of history where a bunch of badass seafarers were basically running amok across Europe.
Precisely. Generally speaking, the Viking Age spans from the late 8th century to the mid-11th century, marked by the first major Viking raid on Lindisfarne in 793 AD, and ending with the Norman conquest of England in 1066 AD.
Lindisfarne, right?
Yeah.
That was like the Vikings' hello world moment. Imagine those poor monks shitting their robes when these long ships suddenly appeared on the horizon.
It was a significant event that sent shockwaves across Europe, marking the beginning of what we now call the Viking Age. But it's crucial to remember that raiding wasn't their sole occupation.
Yeah, I get it. They weren't just bloodthirsty pirates. They were also traders, explorers, settlers, multifaceted badasses.
Exactly. Their activities encompassed a wide range from establishing settlements in Iceland and Greenland to trading along the Volga River, reaching as far as the Caspian Sea and the Byzantine Empire.
Well, Vikings in Baghdad? Were they trying to haggle for magic carpets and shit?
While no records of flying carpets exist, their presence in the Middle East is well documented. They traded goods like furs, amber, and slaves for silver, silks, and spices, demonstrating their far-reaching economic influence.
So these guys weren't just some backwater barbarians. They were running a global trading empire. Brutal as fuck, no doubt, but still impressive. All right, let's talk about the Viking look. We all picture those horned helmets, but I have a sneaking suspicion that's total bullshit.
You'd be correct. The horn helmet is a romanticized invention of the 19th century, perpetuated by artists and operas. No archaeological evidence supports its existence during the Viking Age.
Damn, there goes my Halloween costume. But seriously, what's the deal with this myth? Why do we all think Vikings wore those ridiculous helmets?
It's a combination of factors. Early scholars often misinterpreted ancient symbols and imagery, and the romanticism of the 19th century led to an idealized, even fantastical portrayal of Vikings. The horn helmet became a visual shorthand for their supposed barbarity.
Well, I guess it does look pretty badass, even if it's totally made up. So if they weren't rocking those horned helmets, what did these guys actually wear? Were they all just strutting around in bear skins and chainmail?
Their attire varied depending on social status and purpose. Archaeological finds and contemporary descriptions suggest a combination of practicality and aesthetics. Linen, wool, and leather were common materials, and while chainmail was a valuable form of armor, it was primarily for the wealthy.
Okay, so maybe not as glamorous as Hollywood makes it seem. But what about those fierce beards and braided hair? Was that all part of the Viking swagger?
Hair and beards were indeed significant aspects of their appearance. Men typically wore their hair long and often braided or tied back. Beards were a symbol of masculinity and status, and grooming practices, as evidenced by combs and tweezers found in graves, suggest they took pride in their appearance.
So even back then, it was all about looking sharp. I bet those Viking barber shops were a fucking nightmare. Imagine trying to braid a beard while some drunk berserker is swinging an axe around. But let's cut the crap and get down to the nitty-gritty. What was Viking society actually like? Was it a complete free-for-all, or did they have some kind of order?
Viking society was structured, though perhaps not as rigid as other medieval societies. They had a hierarchical system with three main classes: thralls, carls, and jarls.
Well, break that down for me. Who were the big dogs and who were the, let's say, less fortunate folks?
Thralls were at the bottom, essentially slaves often captured during raids or born into servitude. Carls were freemen, farmers, and artisans, the backbone of society. And at the top were the jarls, the chieftain class wielding power and wealth.
So, classic medieval pyramid scheme. You've got the poor bastards at the bottom, the hardworking stiffs in the middle, and the rich assholes calling the shots. But wait, if you were Carl, a regular Joe Viking, did you have any chance of climbing that social ladder?
Social mobility wasn't impossible. A successful warrior or trader could accumulate wealth and influence, potentially even reaching the rank of a jarl. And then there were the Filag, which were essentially guilds or associations based on shared interests, crafts, or military service.
Filag. Sounds like some kind of secret Viking society. Were they sacrificing goats and plotting world domination in those meetings?
While the rituals of Filag are debated, their primary function was to provide mutual support and protection within their communities. They played a role in trade legal disputes and even religious practices.
So like a Viking support group. You get together, drink some need bitch about the Jarl, and maybe plan a raid or two. Sounds like my kind of club. But let's be real. Social climbing can't be the only thing on these guys' minds. What about love, sex, and all that good stuff? Were Viking women just barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, or did they have some say in things?
Contrary to popular belief, Viking women held a surprisingly high degree of freedom and rights compared to other European societies of the time.
No shit. So they weren't just churning butter and popping out babies.
While domestic duties were certainly part of their lives, they could also own property, inherit wealth, divorce, and manage businesses.
Hold up, they could divorce their husbands. That's more progressive than some countries today.
Indeed, their legal rights was significant, particularly in areas like Iceland and Norway. They could testify in court, participate in religious ceremonies, and even manage their husbands' affairs in their absence.
Damn, Viking women were the original badass feminists. Okay, I'm officially intrigued. But let's get back to something a little more tangible. Those legendary Viking ships. I mean, they weren't just for show, right?
Viking ships were marvels of engineering, essential for their success in warfare, trade, and exploration. The longship, with its sleek design and shallow draft, was ideal for navigating rivers and coastlines.
The longship. The ultimate Viking chariot. Sleek, deadly, and probably smelled like a mix of seawater mead and unwashed ass. But I bet those weren't the only boats they built, right?
Correct. They also constructed Nars, larger, more robust vessels designed for carrying cargo and traversing open seas. Their shipbuilding techniques were highly sophisticated, relying on clinker construction overlapping planks that provided strength and flexibility.
So they had a boat for every occasion. That's some serious dedication to seafaring. But let's be real, these ships weren't just about practicality, were they? There had to be some serious Viking mojo attached to them.
Indeed, ships held profound symbolic and religious significance for Vikings. High-status individuals were sometimes buried with their ships, showcasing the central role these vessels played in their lives and beliefs.
Like those lavish ship burials at Gokstad and Osenberg. Talk about going out in style. But ship is only as good as its crew. What was it like to be a Viking sailor? Was it all just rowing, raiding, and feasting?
Life at sea was undoubtedly challenging, demanding physical endurance, navigation skills, and a tolerance for harsh conditions. They relied on celestial navigation and knowledge passed down through generations to traverse vast distances.
So no GPS or fancy maps, just the stars and a shitload of courage. Respect. But I bet those voyages weren't all work and no play.
You're right. The sagas mention various forms of entertainment on board, from singing and storytelling to games of chance and even athletic competitions. They were resourceful and resilient people finding ways to maintain morale and camaraderie during long and arduous journeys.
Games of chance. Were they gambling with their plunder? I'm picturing some high-stakes dice rolling on a stormy sea. Sounds intense. But we've covered the ships, the society, the fashion, and the badass women. Let's get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
What did these guys eat? Were they all just gnawing on bones and chugging mead? I mean, you could only pillage so many villages before you need a decent meal.
Viking cuisine was more diverse than one might expect. Archaeological evidence from settlements, waste pits, and even those lavish ship burials provides a fascinating glimpse into their diet.
Wait, you're telling me we learn about Viking food by digging through their garbage?
Precisely. Analysis of food remains combined with botanical studies and contemporary accounts paint a surprisingly detailed picture of what they ate. They consumed a variety of foods, including grains, vegetables, fruits, meats, fish, and dairy products.
Okay, so maybe not just a diet of meat and mutton. But what about specific dishes? Do they have any Viking specialties?
One staple food was skyr, a type of yogurt still popular in Iceland today. They also consumed a variety of breads, porridges, and stews, often flavored with herbs and spices. Meat, particularly pork and beef, was preserved through salting, smoking, and drying.
Scar, huh? Sounds a little fancy for a bunch of barbarians. All right, I'm starting to see that these Vikings weren't just about brute force. They had culture, a bit of a refined palate, and maybe even some culinary skills. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Indeed, it's essential to avoid romanticizing their lives. While they had access to a variety of foods, the quality and quantity varied depending on social status and location. Evidence suggests that food shortages and famine were not uncommon, particularly during harsh winters.
So even for Vikings, life wasn't always a feast. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But hey, even with those tough times, you got to find ways to blow off some steam. What did these guys do for fun when they weren't out conquering and pillaging?
Apart from the occasional celebratory bloodbath, Vikings were surprisingly active and enjoyed a range of sports and games.
Hit me with it. What were their favorite pastimes?
Activities like wrestling, swimming, and even oar jumping, where they'd leap from oar to oar on a moving ship, were popular. They also had ball games, horse fighting, and board games like Nifltafl, a strategy game that predates chess.
Oar jumping. That sounds like a recipe for a broken neck.
Yeah.
But hey, I guess you got to keep yourself entertained somehow when you live in a land of long winters and endless nights. But what about those legendary Viking feasts? Were they all just chugging ale and swapping war stories?
While alcohol played a role, festive gatherings were also occasions for music, storytelling, and poetry. They played instruments like harps, lutes, and lyres, and skaldic poetry. A complex form of oral tradition was highly valued.
Okay, so maybe they weren't just mindless brutes. They had culture art, a social hierarchy, and even a bit of a refined palate. But we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover about these fascinating bastards. Stick around, because we're about to delve even deeper into the world of Vikings. All right, you beautiful bastards, welcome back to the deep dive. We're knee-deep in Viking lore, sifting through the bullshit and uncovering the fascinating reality of these legendary seafarers. Last time we busted the myth of those ridiculous horned helmets, explored their surprisingly sophisticated society, and even discovered that Viking women were basically the OG girl bosses.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface of their complex and often misunderstood culture.
Damn right. And today we're diving even deeper, exploring the nitty-gritty details of their daily lives, their beliefs, and their badassery. So grab your mead horns, you magnificent bastards, and let's continue our journey into the heart of the Viking Age.
A journey that promises to be both enlightening and entertaining, I assure you.
You said it. Now, last time we left off talking about those crazy oar jumping competitions. Anything else these guys did for fun that would make our modern asses look like lazy couch potatoes?
Well, let's not forget skiing and ice skating, essential for navigating those harsh Scandinavian winters, but also a source of recreation and competition. The saga mentions a King Olaf Tryggvason, renowned for his athletic prowess from mountain climbing to knife juggling.
Knife juggling. Sounds like that dude had a death wish. But hey, respect for the multitasking skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered food, fun, and fashion. What about the whole religious side of things? Were they all just worshiping Odin and sacrificing virgins to appease the gods?
Their belief system, often referred to as Norse paganism, was indeed polytheistic, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses representing various aspects of nature, war, and fate. Odin, the All-Father, Thor, the god of thunder, and Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, were among the most prominent deities.
Right, because who needs therapy when you can just rage into battle and blame it on the god of thunder? I mean, it's a pretty convenient excuse to go berserk on your enemy.
Yeah, while that's an oversimplification, their belief in fate and the influence of the gods played a significant role in their worldview and actions. They believed in Valhalla, a grand hall in Asgard, ruled by Odin, where warriors slain in battle would feast and fight for eternity.
So basically a Viking heaven reserved for the most badass motherfuckers, metal as fuck. But it wasn't all just blood and guts, right? They had rituals, ceremonies, all that jazz.
Their religious practices involved a combination of public rituals, private ceremonies, and personal beliefs. They had sacred groves, temples, and altars dedicated to specific deities. Sacrifices, both animal and human, were part of their rituals, though perhaps not as widespread or frequent as some might imagine.
Human sacrifices. Okay, that's a bit dark even for Vikings. But I guess when you're dealing with gods of thunder and war, you gotta up the ante, right?
It's important to understand these practices within their historical context. While shocking to modern sensibilities, sacrifice was not uncommon in ancient cultures. For the Vikings, it was a way to appease the gods, ensure a good harvest, or seek victory in battle.
All right, fair enough. But let's shift gears and talk about something a little more hands-on. Those legendary Viking weapons. What was their arsenal like? Were they all rocking those double-headed axes and, horned helmets?
Yes, the horned helmets again. As we established, those are purely a product of romanticized imagination.
Yeah, no, just messing with you. But seriously, what kind of weapons were these guys using to crack skulls?
Their weaponry was both practical and diverse, reflecting their skills as blacksmiths and their adaptability in combat. Swords, axes, spears, bows, and arrows. These were the staples of their arsenal.
Some pretty standard medieval weaponry. But I bet they had some Viking flair to them, right? I'm picturing some ornate carvings and shit.
Indeed, many weapons were adorned with intricate carvings, inlaid silver, and even inscriptions of runes, their ancient alphabet. A wealthy Viking warrior would have taken pride in the craftsmanship and decoration of his weapons, viewing them as symbols of his status and prowess.
So they were blinged out even in battle. Talk about a fashion statement. Okay, so they had their weapons, their gods, and their badass ships. But all good things must come to an end, right? How did the whole Viking era eventually wrap up? Did they just get tired of raiding and decide to settle down like a bunch of retired pirates?
The decline of the Viking Age wasn't a sudden event, but a gradual process influenced by a confluence of factors. The emergence of stronger, more centralized kingdoms in Europe, the Christianization of Scandinavia, and even climate change likely played a role.
Christianization. So they traded their horned helmets, again not real, for crucifixes.
The conversion to Christianity was a complex process, often intertwined with political alliances and social changes. While some embraced the new faith readily, others clung to their pagan beliefs, leading to a blending of traditions that persisted for centuries.
So it wasn't just a case of convert or die, more like a slow and messy transition.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that the Vikings weren't a monolithic group. Their responses to Christianity varied depending on location, social status, and individual beliefs.
Got it. So no Viking jihad or anything like that. But even with Christianity spreading, these guys were still known for their warrior culture. What about that whole berserker thing? Were those guys really frothing at the mouth, biting their shields and going full-on rage monster in battle?
While the berserkers were real, their portrayal in popular culture is often exaggerated and sensationalized.
Yeah.
It's likely they were elite warriors who fought with a particular ferocity, perhaps fueled by ritualistic practices or even certain substances, but they weren't mindless savages.
So no shield biting or hallucinogenic mushroom trips before battle. Damn, that's a bit disappointing. But hey, at least we know those horned helmets were bullshit.
Indeed. It's crucial to separate historical fact from the mythology that has grown up around the Vikings.
Speaking of mythology, how do we actually know all this stuff? I mean, apart from those awesomely trashy cesspits, of course.
We have a variety of sources: archaeological finds, rune stones, written accounts from both Viking and non-Viking perspectives, and even linguistic analysis helps us piece together their story.
Rune stones, like those giant stone tablets with weird scribbles on them?
Runes were their alphabet, and those inscriptions on stone served as memorials, told stories, and even boasted about their exploits. They're like ancient Viking Twitter feeds carved in stone.
Ancient Viking Twitter. I bet those were full of drunken boasts and epic diss tracks.
One can only imagine. But these runestones, along with sagas, chronicles, and place names, provide invaluable insights into their language, culture, and travels. It's like a giant puzzle we keep piecing together.
A puzzle with a few missing pieces, I'm sure. But hey, that's what keeps history interesting, right? Always more to discover, more myths, to bust more Viking badassery to uncover. But we covered a lot of ground today. We've explored their beliefs, their weapons, their eventual decline, and even their surprising hygiene habits.
It's been a fascinating exploration, to say the least.
Damn right. But our Viking voyage isn't over yet. Stick around, you magnificent bastards, because in the next part, we're going to tackle those lingering misconceptions. Delve into the darker side of their history and explore why these legendary seafarers continue to captivate our imaginations centuries later. All right, you beautiful bastards, welcome back to the final leg of our Viking Odyssey. We've sailed through the choppy waters of history, busted some myths, uncovered some surprising facts, and hopefully entertained the shit out of you along the way.
We've certainly explored a wide range of topics, from their sophisticated shipbuilding techniques to the unexpected freedom enjoyed by Viking women.
Damn right. But before we drop anchor and bid farewell to these legendary seafarers, there's a few more treasures we need to dig up. We've talked about the romanticized image of Vikings, the horned helmets, the berserker rage, the endless pillaging. But let's be real, these guys weren't all sunshine and rainbows. There's a darker side to their history that we can't ignore.
Indeed, like any historical period, the Viking Age was marked by both triumphs and tragedies, innovation and brutality.
So let's cut the crap and get into it. What were some of the less glamorous aspects of Viking life? I mean, we've touched on slavery, but I'm guessing there's more to the story.
Slavery was an integral part of their economy and social structure. Thralls, as they were called, formed a significant part of the workforce, performing manual labor domestic duties and even serving as warriors.
So basically, the foundation of their society was built on the backs of these unfortunate souls. Fucked up, to say the least.
It's a stark reminder that even the most innovative and adventurous societies can be deeply flawed.
No doubt. But slavery wasn't their only vice, right? I mean, these guys were known for their love of a good brawl.
Violence was indeed prevalent in Viking society, particularly in regions like Norway, where conflict over land and resources was common. Blood feuds, vendettas, and revenge killings were part of their social code.
So it wasn't all just heroic battles and glorious conquests. There was a lot of petty squabbling and bloodshed going on.
Precisely. While their martial prowess is undeniable, it's important to remember that violence was also a part of their everyday lives, not just reserved for epic sagas and battles against foreign enemies.
Got it. So these guys weren't just noble warriors fighting for glory. They were also capable of some pretty brutal shit.
That's a crucial point. We need to approach history with nuance, recognizing both the admirable and the abhorrent aspects of past societies.
Well said. But enough with the doom and gloom. Let's end on a more positive note. Despite their flaws, these Vikings left behind a legacy that continues to fascinate us centuries later. Why do you think they still hold such a grip on our imaginations?
Their story is one of daring exploration, relentless ambition, and a profound connection to their cultural heritage. They were master shipbuilders, skilled warriors, and shrewd traders who left their mark across continents.
Yeah, they were basically the rock stars of the medieval world. And let's be real, who doesn't love a good underdog story? These guys came from a harsh, unforgiving land and managed to conquer, explore, and trade their way across the globe.
Their resilience, adaptability, and sheer audacity continue to inspire awe and admiration. Their sagas, filled with tales of heroism, betrayal, love, and loss, resonate with universal themes that transcend time and culture.
Damn right. They were complex, flawed, and undeniably badass. They challenged conventions, pushed boundaries, and left behind a legacy that continues to shape our understanding of history and ourselves.
And as we've learned throughout this deep dive, their story is far more nuanced and fascinating than the simplistic, often romanticized image that persists in popular culture.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So there you have it, you magnificent bastards. The Vikings, more than just torn helmets and drunken brawls, they were a force to be reckoned with, leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate our imaginations. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need a goddamn drink. Skull to the Vikings.
Skull indeed. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop diving deeper into the fascinating world of history.